Hello, I'm Pamela Reid, and I'm so glad that you've come to join me today at Grandparent Connect. So, did you know that there are over 1 billion grandparents on planet Earth at the moment? And according to Yale University, of the world's 7.6 billion people, a record-breaking 1.4 billion are grandparents. 800 million grandmothers, 600 million are grandfathers. A quote from them: "Today's grandparents play a vital and increasingly indispensable role in modern family life, contributing to the well-being of generations succeeding them." Although grandparents have always been an integral part of family life, during the past half-century, their roles have evolved as a result of demographic, economic, social and technological changes taking place worldwide. So over the last 20 years, through what I call Grandparent Inc., I have encouraged, pleaded and sometimes tricked grandparents into writing their personal stories as children's stories, specifically for their grandchildren. I wanted them to connect and build relationships through their stories. I wanted them to become their storybook heroes. Now, there's been eager responses and there have been reluctant reactions, but the general consensus has been, I'm so glad I made the effort. So another major element to writing your own stories is the influence it can have on your grandchildren. Somehow there is a powerful motivation for a child when you have shared a story with them, then you suggest that they share one with you. Now, I've published quite a few books now, and I know that fact gives my grandchildren courage to write, and I love that. So now I've added another dimension to the story sharing. In the last 18 years, we've added 20 grandchildren to our family ranks, and increasingly, I have experienced the wonder of seeing the world through their eyes. Maybe as a parent, I was just too busy feeding my children, running them from place to place. But as a grandparent, I'm seeing things differently. Also, in the last few years as a relief teacher, I see teachers who are stretched to their limits, trying to meet assessment requirements and deal with children from numerous cultures, language levels, abilities and disabilities, all within one classroom. So I decided that as a worldwide force, grandparents can become an amazing force in providing individual attention to their grandchildren. That between them, they can facilitate a creative story-sharing process that can build connection with their grandchildren while increasing their learning and brain development. You know, I firmly believe that grandparents can be key to their grandchildren's learning. Not the key, but so very important. My belief is that you can have fun and connect with your grandchildren and be an educator all at once, and in just 15 minutes a week through story sharing. So this is Grandparent Connect. Now remember, the primary objective is to engage and connect and facilitate learning and creativity with your grandchild. The primary requirement for this initiative is to have fun, taking time to really delight in your grandchild's creativity. And the primary thing to remember, you can either miss an opportunity or make an opportunity in helping them unlock the stories inside their heads and their hearts. Have you ever watched a child discover something in nature? Story. My 3-year-old grandson was watching a small fly on the windowsill. He suddenly chuckled and said, "This is such a cute little fly." At this point, I could see 2 possible reactions. Option 1, grab the fly spray, end of story. Option 2, develop the conversation and my grandson's imagination and my connection with him. So I resisted the temptation to grab the fly spray and went with option 2. So here's how it went. Me, Why is he cute? Grandson using his hands to describe. He's so tiny, so he's cute. Me, if he's so cute, does he have a name? Grandson without hesitation. Porridge. Me, hesitating. Porridge the fly? Yes, Porridge the fly. He's so cool. At this point, we needed to feed the chickens. So as we walk across the garden, he says, Porridge is coming too. Me, Porridge the fly? Yes, Porridge wants to see the chickens. Me, because we're feeding chickens and it's topical, what do you think Porridge likes to eat? Grandson, after a thoughtful moment, says, poop. Now, he's big on shock value and loves things poopy. So me, refusing to react, what sort of poop? Grandson stops still and repeats, what sort of poop? Are there different poops? Me, pointing around the little farm we're on, there are here, look, there's chickens, and he continues, cows, alpacas, dogs and chickens. He's getting the idea and obviously finding it really funny. And what do cows eat, I ask? Grass. Me, lots of grass. And what do alpacas eat? Grandson, grass? But maybe they want something else. Me, and what do dogs eat? So you get my drift. I could have gone with option 1 and grabbed the fly spray, and Porridge the fly would have been a statistic before he even had a chance to exist. Instead, Porridge lives on somewhere, but most importantly, in my memory and in my grandson's imagination. So how does this conversation assist in brain development and social connection? We went from an observation of a cute little fly to a scientific discussion on flies and other animals and their eating habits, and everything was from the perspective of our new main character, Porridge the fly. Now, what else would Porridge see as he flew through the air? We get a discussion on perspective and gravity. Why did he come here to where my grandson lived? A discussion on choices follows. As we held hands and walked through the grass and the conversation flowed, it was a really special moment of connecting, and largely because we created and allowed Porridge the fly to become part of our special circle. I didn't miss an opportunity. I was able to make an opportunity to connect. Later, I took a few seconds to bring up an assortment of cartoon fly images on my computer. I then showed my grandson the 20 or so images and asked him which one looked like Porridge. He took his time, then burst out laughing and pointed to one particular image. There's Porridge! So I tried scrolling through other pictures, but he always came back to that same image. It was so clear to him. The point is, children often have very clear ideas in their minds, and their ability to visualize, it's what enables them to play for long periods in an imaginary world. How often have you asked a child to stop what they're doing, to do something you want them to do, and they just don't respond? Even worse, in your mind, they ignore you and go back to their play in their imaginary world. But what if they could tell you about that world that they're so busy in? What would you find out? What they often lack is the ability to express what they're seeing, but it's very real to them. So don't reach for the fly spray. Instead, grasp that opportunity to open up the conversational pathways. Now, as children get older and are required to fit in the system, they often face conflict. Sir Ken Robinson, as a world-renowned educator, was passionate about creativity in education. He stated, "People conclude that they're not good at anything because they're not good at what's required of them, but they may well have deep capabilities that haven't been touched on yet." So a narrow curriculum often segregates people whose interest doesn't lie within it. As a grandparent, you don't have a curriculum or assessments to worry about. What you do have is the time, ability, and desire to help a child discover what they love or are excited about. We have the opportunity to connect our grandchildren with their own sense of possibility, often buried deep beneath the surface. So let's digress a little and see if you recognise yourself in any part of this scenario. Teacher tells the students they're going to do a piece of creative writing about two children express delight. The others grimace or have no reaction at all. It may be very clear to the teacher what they want their students to achieve. Inside the majority of students, there's an inner conflict going on based on grammatical rules and regulations that they've been learning for the last few years. Inner thoughts going on. What if I spell the words wrong? What if I get all the parts of speech mixed up? What if I say the wrong thing? Last time I got a D for my writing. I don't want another D. Or they might even just say, what did she say? Then there's the inner resolve that comes. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to get it wrong again. Therefore, I won't do anything. Or by the time they get over the worrying, there isn't enough time to write anything they feel happy about. So any creative thought is quickly overwhelmed by worry about consequences or lack of ability. What if they didn't feel that pressure when creating a story? What if you provided them with a way to express themselves at their own pace? What if you fueled their ideas with great, what I call magic questions? Questions that indicate that you're really listening to them and interested in their ideas. What if you became their scribe? You know, many children, because of their age or lack of physical ability, are unable to even form letters and words on paper or even the computer. Because of this, their creative ideas remain trapped inside their minds. I'm going to repeat that. Their creative ideas remain trapped inside their minds. Have you ever felt that? The frustration of not feeling good enough, of fearing your inability to perform the task, the feeling that everyone else is better at this writing thing than you. Do you want your grandchild to feel the same way? Let's look at how you can respond to their problem. Option 1, the fly spray, says you can leave their teachers and parents to deal with these issues. It's not your problem. Option 2 tells you that here is a golden opportunity to connect with your grandchild and build them creatively and emotionally. Another grandson really struggled with handwriting and getting thoughts down at school, even with the computer. Yet I knew from the amazing Lego constructions he did, from conversations we'd shared, that he had some really great creative ideas. So we scheduled a time, and as he sat in the family designated story sharing chair, the story flowed and I was amazed. He described the characters clearly. The plot evolved as I questioned, but it had a definite direction and destination. There were twists in the plot that I didn't expect. I was fascinated and I couldn't keep up. I asked to stop after 30 minutes and I'm sure he could have kept going. But we scheduled the next session and he went off happily. I wrote it up on the computer and sent the file to him. The next session, he picked up the story immediately and the descriptions were even clearer because he'd had time to think about it during the week. Then we decided to make it just a 15-minute session. Because we were both familiar with the story and the characters, the story still flowed as did the time. I was looking forward to the next instalment. But before the fourth session, something cropped up. We had to postpone it. Again, I was really impressed when after a three-week break, he picked up the story without hesitation. I believe we've laid the foundation of a junior novel. So, will your story sharing sessions be spontaneous or arranged? Spontaneous means you need to be really attentive to your grandchild's conversations and observations when you're with them or talking to them online. Remember the beginning of Porridge the Fly. Listen for clues to what they're interested in or are fascinated by. Maybe it's about one of their favourite activities. But suggest they create a main character who plays the sport or enjoys the activity. It then turns it into a third-person narrative, and it will require them to be more objective about their story. And having them create more than one character also requires them to think of other characters' perspectives. If you're going to arrange the session, means you need to organise a 15-minute session with your grandchild and ask your parents to schedule their parents to schedule the time. Let them choose a topic, decide on one together. They'll become more willing after the first couple of sessions. Now, setting the scene. You'll need to help your grandchild move their mind from what they were doing 5 minutes before your session. You need to bring them to a place where they're clear to think. If they're preoccupied, let them tell you what's been happening and listen carefully to see what aspect of their activity is most important to them. Is it the relationships? Is it conquering something? Is it solving a mystery? Ask them if they have a special story in mind. If they shake their head, suggest they create a story about another main character, perhaps doing what they're preoccupied about. Do you see where we're heading with this? Make their story sharing current and topical. Now, the magic questions. I really cannot stress enough the importance of asking magic questions as you story share. Some grandparents have said that they can't think quickly enough to ask the right questions. So here are some suggestions. What do you think? This is a key question to ask during the story sharing, maybe several times. It places the story firmly as theirs. It allows them to create the next step. Wow, positive observation. That sounds like a great idea. Where does it happen? Is it in a desert? Suggest a place that requires them to agree or create another one. Was it raining, snowing, really hot? Oh, wow, that sounds like a really strong character. Are they strong? So there are things to note as a scribe, though. Please avoid trying to create the story for them. Always ask a question rather than give a suggestion. If something doesn't sound right to you, hesitate and repeat what they just said. It helps them realize they might have to think of an alternative. But use expressions like, wow, and really, and oh, I like that, as you write. And very importantly, when you finish the session, thank them for sharing their story with you. Now you need to show them that they have written or created the story. Give them positive feedback of an actual written story. Tell their story back to them. Invite them to draw a picture to go with this story. Maybe ask them if you can do another story sharing with them. But try to establish a regular time for story sharing that's uniquely your time together. Now, I've tried both spontaneous and random sessions, and the best, most constructive results have been with regular weekly sessions. However, you may need a spontaneous session to get started with and to build their story sharing confidence. So, think 15 minutes only. I tried just letting the children keep going at first, but they almost couldn't stop their story sharing once they got started. And it was difficult for me to get everything written down. And then I had to write it up. 15 minutes is a workable session. Neither of you lose interest. It lends to a sequel in the next session, but be prompt with writing up the story and returning it to them. It definitely increases their confidence in you. And I found that returning their story within 1 to 2 days is ideal. The children love to hear their stories read to them possibly as bedtime stories, but be prepared to read it multiple times. It also enables parents to see what their child is doing and is capable of. Now, where physical handwriting is an issue, I have returned the story in large font with spaces between the lines of script so they can physically copy the story word by word. Then the finished product is their completed story written in their handwriting. This is something they may never have experienced before. So, can you do this when you're a long distance away from your grandchild? Absolutely. And isn't it a great way to connect despite the distance? A regular weekly get-together followed by sending stories and illustrations back and forth. And keeping a file with their name on your computer or in your file cabinet. They love the concept that they have their own special place in your files. And then you can take it all to another level by encouraging their illustrations or collaborating on them. You can indulge your inner artist. Maybe even completing a proper hardcover book of their stories or a compilation of stories. So give yourself a reminder to connect once a week. And then what about if you have multiple grandchildren? Work out the numbers, create a roster. Quoting Ken Robinson again, people conclude they're not good at anything because they're not good at what's required of them. But they may well have deep capabilities that haven't been touched on yet. It's time to launch Grandparent Connect in your family's lives and be prepared to make a difference. So, this is Grandparent Connect. Remember the primary objective? To engage, connect and facilitate learning and creativity with your grandchild. The primary requirement is to have fun. Take time to delight in your grandchild's creativity. Remember, you can either miss an opportunity or make an opportunity in helping them to unlock those stories that are inside their heads and inside their hearts. You remember Porridge the Fly? Of course you do. He's memorable because he's unlikely. The next day my grandson talked more about Porridge and the fact that he had a new friend. So watch this space for the continuing story of Porridge the Fly and Scooter the Bumblebee. Thank you so much for joining me and have the best time connecting.